Right now we are back on our main project summary page for a brand new project, and as you can see, it has no information in it. What we need to do now is add some practices in order to start to populate this project with the estimated reductions in nitrogen, phosphorus, and total suspended solids that your grant program officer is hoping that you will share. So let's click on either the green circle or the square plus sign in order to add our first project. First, we're going to name our project. This name is not tied to anything in the system. It is intended to make it easy for you to reference and find. So, for instance, if you have 10 forest buffers in your proposed project, please don't name it forest buffer. This is a terrible name, but you might want to name it like Smith's forest buffer in order to reference the parcel of land where the forest buffer will be implemented. Once you have your name, click OK, and the system will bring you to an edit practice page where you can add some more information. And as you can see, there's this fun little orange circle on the right-hand panel that's going to help you understand where you are missing information that's necessary in order to complete this project. So the description is again useful for you and for your funders or program managers in order to understand what it is that is happening in this implementation practice. Next, you need to choose a practice type. I cannot emphasize how important choosing a practice type is to this entire process. You're going to click on this blue link in order to get over to all of the practice types available for this program. If you don't see your practice listed, that means that we don't have it set up for use in this program. And if that's the case for you, I recommend reaching out to your program officer. For everyone else, you can see right away how many practices there are. If you want to go through them and read them all to find the perfect fit, absolutely go ahead. Otherwise, we have this handy search tool that will help narrow you down to what you think will be a relevant practice for what you are proposing to implement. I'm going to choose Forest Buffer Urban. I'm going to click that button and then confirm my selection. As you can see, there's a lot of different forest buffer options here. So once we confirm my selection, the system brings you back to this main edit practice page, and now you have that practice type, which is actually a component in our database tied to your practice. Now, I highly recommend taking the time to read through the practice type description because it's going to give you some important information on what other pieces of detail you're going to need to add to this practice. You can always change your practice type by clicking back over to that list, and you can add a site if you want. Sites are optional. They are used by some organizations and groups in order to better categorize their projects, but it has no influence on what you'll be seeing in terms of those model calculations for pollutant reductions. And last but not least, you can change privacy for on or off. If privacy is on, this means that no one will be able to see the location of your project other than you and the program managers, but the information will not appear on any public-facing dashboard maps. So once you have that practice type included, click Save, and we'll confirm that that has been saved, and the system will bring you to the next page, which is the location. Every project in FieldDoc requires a location. Most likely, the geometry type that will be required will be a polygon, but in some instances, depending on the practice type, it will actually be a line. So again, I recommend referring back to the description of the practice type you chose to make sure that you're using the right the right type of geometry. So you have a few options for entering in this information. You can put in a address. That's not a real address, so don't do that. And the system will deliver you directly to that address. Or you can upload a file that has all of this information if you don't want to draw it in the system, if you have that handy. If you are going to upload a file, just make sure that you review the requirements so that it does successfully upload, and so that you're not kind of banging your head against a wall of wondering why you're not seeing a polygon there. So I recommend, if you're going to draw your polygon, to switch the base layer to satellite and see what happens. It just looks really great. Now, it's more helpful when you're not showing a city location, because you can, get a better sense of parcel boundaries and stuff like that with that satellite imagery. Next, you're going to click the draw tool, and you'll see that your pointer has changed to a bullseye, which is super helpful as you start to click around here and draw that polygon. In this instance, for this practice, the system and the models are asking for a polygon for the footprint of the practice. You'll know who you are. Some of you are going to need to do drainage basins instead. And just take a look and draw what feels right. And then what you'll see is that once you've created your polygon, the system's going to estimate the practice area. And this field itself is not editable, but if it's completely wrong, if you really want to change your polygon, you can do that by double clicking and then moving, dragging and moving any of the dots. And for those of you who can do two things at once, you can notice that as I drag, that estimated practice area is decreasing. I'll show you another way to estimate that practice area in a moment. Once you're done, please remember to click Save. The system's not going to save any information for you without you clicking that Save button. So we have now been delivered to the metric targets page, and this is where I think the magic happens. So again, you're seeing your forest buffer description, and this was the piece of information pulled from our database that's tied to a model. Next, you have your practice extent, which is showing you that acre value based on the polygon that you drew. But it turns out that in my hypothetical grant application, I said that the acreage was 2.5, not 2.8. So I need to be accurate, right? So I'm going to override that polygon value. It's fine. You don't have to keep changing that polygon in order to get it exactly right. You can just override with this custom value. And what that means is that in all the model input calculations, it's going to use 2.5 rather than 2.86. And then we're going to keep scrolling down, and if this was one of a handful of models that required additional inputs, this is where those inputs would go in. And you don't need to know off the top of your head if it needs additional inputs. The system will give you those instructions here. Next, if you have any special metrics that you'd like to add to the system that are manually going to be tracked rather than calculated by the system, you can add those here. So forest buffer is a great example to use because you're planting trees. And I'm going to add a number of trees planted to this practice. Okay, let's scroll down to the really exciting part. I haven't done anything except for selected my practice type and added in my geometry, but the system has calculated the estimated reduction in nitrogen, phosphorus, and total suspended solids for me. That work is done. You cannot edit it. You just get to share it with your funder or the program officer for your work. We do, though, have to add in the number of trees we intend to plant through this project. You add that intended end number here and click Save. Now, we won't get into it in this video, but what you'll see is that you can track progress towards this 500 in your reporting. So we've now entered in all of the information necessary for a practice type in your project, and we can go back to that practice type landing page to see all of this information. It's hidden by this report message here, but you can still see behind it the location of the practice, and then you can scroll down and see those metrics assigned to this practice. And because we haven't done any of the work yet, that you have a 0% for the number of trees installed. What's really cool as I roll out the end of this video is that you can also click on the project main page, go back to the very beginning, and all of the work for this practice is also available to see on this main project summary page. Here's where you can also click to create another practice. And as we create more practices, these estimated reductions and manually inputted metrics will also be updated. So use this piece of information in order to start entering in your own practices and see what sort of impact you'll have on your natural world.